Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Welcome back to Purchasing Truth. I'm Tom Hazard, along with your host, Bill Stierle. And you know, Bill, there are so many things going on in our country, actually in the world today, that really make us question where the moral high ground is and who has it, and is it even there? I mean, I'm getting confused by so many things that are different messages and situations in conflict with each other in this regard.
That's a challenge. I mean, when you and I were talking about today, just taking a look at the challenges our society has with who has the moral high ground, and what messages regarding morality stick out, or the ones that we're going to fight for, and the ones we're going to say no, we're going to give a pass. We're going to give a pass to somebody that is in prominence because they're on our team. We like the person. We're going to, be sensitive now that somebody has been affected that is close to us. Now we're going to be concerned with it. So the biggest example I think I can think of as a switch of the moral high ground would be during the AIDS epidemic, when the Reagan administration was literally doing nothing, or very, very little towards the AIDS epidemic. Oh, it's affecting gays. Oh, well, it's affecting gays, and it's this gay thing. And then the pivot comes when, Rock Hudson, the president's friend, got AIDS and died from it. Then it's like, oh, we better do something because one of my friends got, affected by this, and it's a disease now. It used to be, this other thing to this other group that we weren't interested in doing, but the morality changed because it hit close to us, and it's very similar to what Governor Cuomo is going through with the nursing homes. It's like you were controlling optics instead of doing the moral high ground, and that thing is really pretty junky. You've got to do something about this, this situation. So very, very problematic, very challenging, to deal with the ethics and the morals that we would like to live by. And then here's this funny part about, but also the upsetting part about it, is who's setting those standards now for what is moral and what is not.
That is really scary, Bill, to think about who is the arbiter of what is morally acceptable and what is not. And that is a goalpost that seems to be continuing to move. And that's why it's so frustrating to me, anyway, as an observer over the last decade. There are so many ways in which that goalpost has moved.
Yes, I really appreciate that, Tom, the discussion of how the goalpost has moved. And that gets back to a term that we used in the past around situational ethics. It's like, well, I'm ethical in this situation, but this other situation, really, the extreme is, hey, are we going to burn them at the stake? I think it's going to help us. with our party to burn them at the stake. Yeah, out with them. Done. Out. So very, very challenging. So and now people are going to try to fight back with that. Cancel culture has just got obliterated as a concept because all of a sudden you're going to go to it as if it's a card to play against something ethical and moral. No. This is above a level 7 issue. Sending people back to the nursing homes or infected people back to the nursing homes and then undercounting the passing of it is not moral to do. Is that okay if you and I can sit in moral judgment, if that's all right, Tom? I mean, we can do that.
Well, yeah. I mean, we need to at least discuss it.
This is the reason why I asked it that way is because everyone is in charge of their own moral compass, right?
Yes.
Now just get unsettled for about 40 seconds here. From a communication, because this is a communication show, from a communication standpoint, everybody's in charge of their own moral compass. And as a nation, are we going to stand for the moral high ground, or are we going to let the relationship, the financial relationship or the political relationship we have with Saudi Arabia be like it is and not come out with a strong narrative of, hey, you killed somebody that was an American or somebody that was a resident over here working for a company and you kind of did that, and that death is morally reprehensible, but the way they delivered it was not at a 7, 8, or 9. They delivered it at a 5, maybe a 6. You see what I mean? So
yeah, no, that was a politically tricky situation for the government who, I think if a different administration were in power at the time, it would have been dealt with a little differently. But basically saying, oh, they're buying all these arms from us, that's good for American business. We have to put our, righteous indignation sort of on the back burner here, or we're going to upset this other aspect of the relationship. I mean, those are the tricky things that happen,
Tom, the hard question here now. I mean, this is, about communication. Does money influence morals?
Of course it does, unfortunately. Yes. Money and power. And don't you think power is a currency, I think, that influences morals? And, it's interesting because we can look at, things that have taken place over the last 10 years and see how the proportionality of things has really changed. And what may have been something that was morally unacceptable 10 years ago has become so commonplace today, it makes the action that was taken 10 years ago look draconian. I mean, it really is.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, we hold politicians to the concept of a squeaky clean politician and a squeaky clean celebrity. And, are they following in that moral place that we say, yes, pretty good. Now, the challenge is that all somebody has to do it now is to start a rumor about any celebrity, and then all of a sudden they get the way to chisel away from, that's the shine on that celebrity, and you get to, chisel away at that person's, the thing that they built up in their career, which is, I've built up people admiring me for courage, people admiring me for getting out there and telling that risky joke. But now all of a sudden the risky joke has a downside to it, and that one's really, really, really hard. So
let's just go through a bit of a timeline of events and things to talk about all the different, morality issues and how people are being held accountable today and how they were held accountable, just a few years ago. And so let's start with, Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York. Now, I agree, obviously, Bill, we have the nursing home scandal. That is very, very troubling. And that's different. I think that's a different issue that is being investigated. But the other big thing he's facing on the moral scale of things is, sexual harassment, or it's being labeled as sexual harassment, that, he made it, potentially he's being accused of making advances to women, perhaps even unwanted touching or a kiss. And certainly those in the post Me Too world that we live in is, something that is being raised to an alarm level, 8 or 9 on a scale of 10, where he's being investigated, and then a ton of people in the Democratic political power circle are calling for him to resign. So nothing's been proven. There are, I guess, as we record this, 5 or 6 allegations of varying things, to where he said he spoke something that made someone uncomfortable, to as far as, well, posed for a photo and he put his hand on my back, perhaps under someone's shirt, or held there for too long, and maybe, kissed someone. I mean, that's sort of the extent of it. And when you think of at least what's come to light so far, and I'm not defending him, this is not my point here, but when you compare him to like a Harvey Weinstein, who there are hundreds of women that he is alleged to have raped, and there's enough evidence accumulated that he's been arrested and put in jail pending trial. There's a proportionality thing here that is hard to ignore.
For women listening to this show and listening to 2 guys talk about their experience as women being pursued, commented upon, and to deal with the famous video of the woman walking through New York City and being catcalled all the way through, the streets, and just the volume of which that narrative moves in the direction regarding body imagery, sexuality, connection time, and the proportionality of this, the situational ethics of this, and how does someone feel when someone says something? Because that's the first part. There's the first part of it is the person holds a thought about something. You and I all hold all kinds of thoughts about things that other people might find morally wrong or, problematic. And then there's words that come out of our mouth. Well, you and I have both had times in our life where we've put our foot in our mouth and go like, I said that, but I really quite mean it that way. And the person reacted to it. And how did that happen? We stepped in a landmine that we didn't know was there. There was a grenade that the person was holding, and we just said the sentence that pulled the pin out, and it blew up the conversation, right? So that's the second level is, what do we say? The third level is what a person does, which is they take a physical action towards something. So there's this range between the thought to the word to the action. And there's also the same level on the other side of the receiver. The other person has a thought, the other person has some words, and the other person has an action. And you cannot control the meaning that they make up when you say a sentence. And as a person that listens to communication and people in conflict all the time, a simple sentence called, I like her, you put an exclamation mark behind it, means completely different than a question mark. I like her. Yeah, you do. Well, I like her. No, you like her. I like her? No. Well, you had the thought that you liked her. Well, I like her as a friend. You see, I'm starting a conflict with over 3 words. I like her. I'm starting a conflict, and it's just 3 words. Well, it's the way you look at her. Now, all of a sudden, that person's thinking I have a thought in my head. Oh gosh, the thought just came to my head. Listen to the thought just came to my head. Meanwhile, I could be passing gas and I'm smiling gently, and I'm not looking at her at all. That was just to show you how, that's called an authentic, vulnerable moment. Isn't that the funniest thing ever? Is that our thoughts keep throwing things in. And even if we glance at a billboard and a partner could be riding in a car and says, well, did you like the way, that girl looked? The guy might say, what girl? Well, the girl on the billboard. What billboard? Now, either he's being truthful, he didn't see the billboard, or he did see the billboard and is being kind. Didn't want to get into comparison. What billboard? He saw the billboard, had a physical reaction to the billboard. That woman's cute, but he can't say anything because how sensitive the other person is. So he's doing it out of protection for the person, because he knows the person has sensitivities with their looks or their appearance or whatever. So he ain't going to go down. What are you going to do that? Now, many people will call that a lie instead of calling it protection or care or support or kindness.
Or staying out of the corner of being asked to judge somebody else, right? And putting yourself in that uncomfortable and these days dicey situation. Well, so let's keep going down the rabbit hole of these sort of comparisons of things over the last decade. So we start with Andrew Cuomo, and I threw Harvey Weinstein into the mix, and clearly there's a moral standard there that was, absolutely, obliterated, and took down a whole company, and this person who is being sued civilly and also prosecuted criminally, and really certainly appears to be appropriate 100%. I mean, the whole Me Too thing is real and it's here. But so let's go back to President Trump and sticking more on, well, I guess you have both lies and, personal sexual harassment issues there with former President Trump, where he was, he was documented as lying. I mean, I think I lost the scale of the number of lies that were documented, but it was in the 5 figures. It was over 10 or 11,000 lies in his presidency that he spoke. And here you get to sort of the situational ethics of someone who's on your team and he lied, and we're going to accept that because he's on our team or because some of his interests are aligned with ours, right? So where is the moral high ground there with either lying, or if you go back to the Access Hollywood tape and he is on tape himself,
right?
Harassing women, demeaning them. I can't even properly qualify what he did in words right now.
What leaders are missing is step in and through the heat. Don't run from the heat. Don't wait for a fireman to put the heat out. That would be called, talking heads or spokesman or PR people. Step through it. Step through it. Step through it. If you want to lead, step through it. So when the Access Hollywood tape comes out, where were the voices of all of the religious leaders, all of them? And why was that not stronger? Why was the voice not stronger? Listen, we need to protect women because, and they've got all kinds of religious cover. What is it like for a woman to experience? These are the things that we experience in our church in regards to women. Here's how women have been seen. Yes, we have problems on our side, but this one we get to point out because it's pretty clear that the person not just thought it, but spoke it. Yes.
But that didn't happen, right?
No.
Because Trump was on the team of conservative judges. Trump was on the team of fighting against abortion and a lot of other things that evangelical Christians and religious leaders wanted to happen. So here we get to situational morals, maybe, or ethics too. I mean, they cross over each other here.
That's right. They do. Yeah.
And it's like, well, I mean, honestly, what Trump is documented to have said and done, forget just all the things he's accused of doing that, are still working their way through the courts. The fact that he got elected and was still in office for 4 years, compared to, Andrew Cuomo and what he has been accused of. I mean, the proportionality, the scale is just so different.
But notice that the way that the tide has never changed with his population or his base of people that voted for him. There's still the 73 million people that picked him.
Sure.
Joe Biden.
Yes.
Now, a third, well, I would say closer to maybe 2/3 of those people were single voter issues.
Right.
I'm voting for Trump because of taxes. I'm not voting for Biden because of taxes. I'm voting for Trump because of abortion. I am not voting for Biden because of abortion. So those are called single issue voters. They are not looking at the width and breadth of morality.
Agreed.
Is this a good person? Is this a person that has America first? Is that so? Notice I'm sticking the one issue. My taxes is ahead of America first. I could give a crap about America just so I pay lower taxes. I don't care as much about American unity as I do about abortion. You see how I've got my hands up for those who are listening, is that I'm putting them on a scale inside the person's consciousness, because that's the way the moral high ground sort of works, is that the value comes up higher than what we might call the greater value. Is American unity more important than states' rights? Now look at how I stuck a new concept in the middle of it. Is the kind thing to say to a woman, or I have the thought in my head about this woman, and how do I approach that in the most respectful and ethical way, instead of, well, I'm just going to say this thing and see if she goes for it, because I'm acting like, or I'm using the language of a 15-year-old. I'm using the language of a 13-year-old about, something that is funny, but is not funny at what the age I'm at,
Sure.
So really very, very tough for it.
It is very tough. And what's interesting is looking at history again over the last decade, you can really see how people on the Democratic side of politics are holding their people to a higher standard than the Republicans are. And then it's really because, like you said, sort of giving a pass to Trump, maybe because he's the guy that can win the election and he's the guy that can deliver on these things. But if you just go before Trump was elected a couple of years, to remember Al Franken, Senator Al Franken from Minnesota.
Yeah.
Here's a guy that got tarred and feathered and forced out of the Senate because of a joke in poor taste. Absolutely a joke in poor taste, but that he made before he was a politician, before he was elected. He was a comedian.
So we're holding a person, situational ethics, we're holding a person responsible for their thoughts and their behaviors throughout their entire lifetime. Is that the moral standard? Just say it was for him.
It was for him, for sure.
Right. Okay. So now we can go to Brett Kavanaugh.
Right.
The moral standards being held throughout his life. Well, he was only 15. Then the girl was 13 or whatever. And so are we going to hold him to that standard? Well, there are some examples of him in college being that way. Well, he was in college. Are we going to hold him to those standards there? You see how the movement of the moral line is there. And is those things have a horrific quality to them. And where it gets cloudy is that's when you put truth and morality next to each other, they're not good friends. Truth and morality are not friends. they're
that
not.
Is, I think we have to accept that. Yes.
They're not. Truth and morality is not friends because if that really actually were the way those two value sets, truth and morality, sat next to each other, it's like, well, we heard the guy on tape and he said that, and his intention was that, and he also followed those intentions up with action. Is that true? Did President Trump follow those things to action? Well, we have the evidence of all these different people. Well, let's do the same thing for Bill Clinton. Same thing. Did he not have just the creepy idea in his head? Did he not speak moralistic things? And did he not take action on women that were in his field of view? And the weird part about it is, did Hillary Clinton give him a it? Which means that she didn't step in with the morality of it and divorce him, run her own career as a politician, and work her way up. No, she didn't do that. She made here comes, moral compromise. Hey, I'm going to be with this guy. I love him, or I am tolerant of him. But I mean, clearly they're still together and they still have some kind of relationship, and it's kind of up to them how they're going to work out their morals, right?
It is.
Isn't it? Now all of a sudden it becomes like, well, morals are personal. Well, are they really? I mean,
well,
how about religious leaders, or the religious leaders and the various different leaders, business leaders? Don't they need morals? And
they are personal. Sometimes they're public, and they morph and they shift. And I don't know, I think people ourselves as a society and individually are the arbiters of what is morally acceptable and what is not. I want to take it back one more stop in history, and this is before Trump and Al Franken are even on the scene, and that's Brian Williams of NBC News.
That's a media leader.
He is a media leader, and he at the time was held to a much higher standard than almost everybody that came after him that we've discussed today, where he was caught embellishing. To put it kindly, embellishing on a story, but in reality, he was caught lying about an experience he had. It was either in Iraq or Afghanistan in a helicopter,
Right.
as he's doing investigative reporting. He got, I got
He
caught lying,
embellished.
I
He
think is
embellished. Yeah, no,
truth, but
he set up a narrative that, um, from a sense of viewership, is I need to create a experience where it appears that I am going to be in danger, and there is going to be some peril, so that it sets up the story that of the footage that I'm not going to be even close to, that I can weave those two things together in order to get more eyeballs. Tom,
well,
Tom is the do marketing people have morals?
I hope so.
Do salespeople have morals?
Yes, they have to, right?
Well, I asked it in such a general
I
way is
know.
because, and the reason why I just dangled the word moral out there is like, well, what level? One through
Yeah.
10. And this is, people don't, this discussion we're having right now, I particularly find as courageous because, and I get very passionate about this, because at least you and I are stepping forward into it. We're stepping on all kinds of anything from piles of crap to landmines to people that they can take it, they could slice this thing up and just make this a mess in social media by just taking one segment. Bill said this, Tom said this, Bill said this, Tom said this. Most of the time right now is we're becoming morally, with a key on the mouth, shut your mouth, because we got to walk on eggshells. This discussion for the people that do have courage and the leaders that are interested in listening to this is that if a person in leadership doesn't step through, then a person can start to claim morality and not be a very moral person at all. So a person steps in a place of morality and says, well, what about this situation? And all of a sudden, people give that person the ear because at least they are, here it comes, and it's going to be so unsettling. At least they're opinionated. I like what they stand for. Really, tell me again what Tucker Carlson stands for or what Chuck Schumer stands for. They're all in a place of stepping into leadership in their respective leadership positions. One person has influence on decision making, and one person is making decisions or doing their best to make decisions. Now, the influencer, they can sit there at the moral high ground and say, yeah, see down there, you're trying to push a boulder up the hill. I'm going to throw some rocks at you as you're trying to bring a COVID plan to rescue an economy that's flat because of a virus and a pandemic and this. I'm going to throw stones at you. And yeah, I have the moral high ground because media has provided that to me. Media has provided me the opportunity to throw stones at you. Now, it really, what was the quote is very simple. He who has not sinned, throw the first stone, is a moral high ground towards forgiveness and tolerance and acceptance of the human condition and the acceptance to make mistakes. At the same time is, well, Al Franken shows a picture. There's a picture of Al Franken. Well, throw a bunch of stones at him and he has to resign. Unless he's strong enough to say, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not resigning. I was a comedian. It was out of bad taste. Someone took the picture. They wanted a souvenir of me joking around. And it was at the expense of someone that was sleeping. And I'd be happy to talk with her and make amends right now. Notice that's called the step through moment. I would be happy to talk with her and make amends right now. As soon as this phrase make amends with her personally right now, that would radiate throughout the nation. When are we going to start making amends for the mistakes we're making? No, we don't make amends for the thing. We pretend they didn't happen. That is not the moral. That's not the moral high ground. And then we get to pick on it. That we've got to trouble with truth telling as well as accountability.
We
The
do,
moral.
and but to me, the thing that is so shocking and somewhat disheartening, just for me personally, and I don't know how much this is going to matter to any listeners, but you start with Brian Williams and see the standard he was held to. I mean, honestly, I remember back in when 9/11 happened, our new president, fairly inexperienced president at that point, was really in shock, kind of a deer in headlights, and it took him a while to come around and lead the nation. Okay, he did eventually do that, but it took a while.
Right.
And honestly, those of us here in America that were so shocked by that event turned to the three major news anchors. It was Brian Williams, it was Dan Rather, and I think it was Peter Jennings on ABC. These were our father figures, not Brian Williams, I'm sorry, on NBC News, it was Tom Brokaw. I'm sorry. This was even pre Brian Williams, where Brian Williams was involved in NBC, but really Tom Brokaw, Peter Jennings, and Dan Rather. These were our father figures. We're looking to for what to think about this and to come together as a nation, and to an extent even the late night comics of Jay Leno and David Letterman and some of these other people, they were who we looked to. And then so when Brian Williams, now this is much later, about a decade later, is the anchor, and he is being taken out for this sort of embellishing of stories of lying at the end of the day. I remember having a discussion with an uncle of mine who is a very conservative Republican, and he was trying to hold the moral high ground because I was lamenting, I really wish they would reinstate Brian Williams. I wish he would come back. I miss him. And my uncle said, but he lied. That was like the moral high ground, but he lied. The lie was proportionally this huge thing, this breach of trust with the American people that could not be tolerated. Therefore, Brian Williams had to go. And just to see where we've come from then to now, and we've had the liar in chief for 4 years. I'm sorry, but I'm labeling him, yes. And then to have just lowered the bar for lying so much, it really shines a light on what are these things called morals, and who is the arbiter of them. I mean, Kristen Gillibrand, who was one of the ringleader senators who went after Al Franken and forced him out, if not for her effort, Al Franken, and if he had stood up for himself the way you talked about stepping through it, Al Franken could have survived that. And I think, quite honestly, when it comes to morals in the big picture, I think he was a good person and doing really good things in the Senate, representing his people in Minnesota and doing a good job for the nation. But he was forced out. Now, Kristen Gillibrand, now emboldened by that power she had, along with Chuck Schumer and a lot of other Democratic leaders, are calling on Governor Cuomo to resign. And he may yet resign, and he may not survive this. We'll see. Right now, he's sort of playing the Trump playbook of denial and letting investigations play out, but I'm not going to resign type of thing.
Well, what they're doing is they're going to wait for the voters. If he stays, whoever his person is, whoever runs against him is going to, step into it and go like, yeah, do you want a guy that did this and this? Do you want to keep going with that? Or do you want to go with me? Or, yeah, he did some bad things, but really, I just want you to elect me for me. I don't want you to even think about those comparisons. Just, I'm better than him anyways, So our language messages, because this is the communication show, our language messages is, what do we want to stand for? Do we want to stand for integrity and consistency, or are we going to add in the vulnerability of humanity? And we gotta, obviously that's got to be added in somewhere, that there's mistakes that are made, there's specific choices that are made that are not helpful to the majority of people, but they're at least helpful to do one thing. One of the biggest problems our nation is facing is, do we keep the economy going, or do we concern ourselves with a spreading virus? And regrettably, it's got to be virus a little bit more first, economy a little bit more second. And regrettably, the way it was working is economy in the past presidency is economy, and then play down the amount of death because people are going to die anyways. And so what? I mean, I'm being glib about it, but regrettably they were.
Right.
Like, they kind of did not say, because otherwise you could have otherwise say, listen, we're going to treat this a little bit more like the flu. We're not treating this like a pandemic. We're going to treat it more like the flu because we value the economy over people. They would have never said that straight the way I just said it.
No, they wouldn't have.
But that's the moral high ground that they were playing. The economy and the financial, marketplace was more important than the lives of grandma in a nursing home. If your grandma, and they even said this one, oh my God, the guy from Texas even said this. Yeah, my grandma, she knew that it was because she would die for America and for American economy to keep going. I was going like, your grandma? Really? He's going like, you said that? I mean, and he did. And it was really unsettling because he actually did speak the truth about what the policy was leading towards. It's like, we're not going to do anything to really protect this. We're going to keep going out. People are going to get sick. Some people are going to get better. People are going to die. And the numbers are going to be different, but instead of it being the flu, it's going to be the coronavirus. And this is how many people die from the flu. And this is how many people die from the virus. And now they're even backtracking. So, here's what it would have been the deaths for the flu last year, but it's just the deaths just got all concentrated instead of everybody dying.
Well, that's what I'm seeing happening a lot, Bill. Talk about a proportionality, comparison, is that I think because the United States of America is such a large country, roughly 330 million people, that when you lose 500,000, not everybody knows somebody who's died from it. It hasn't impacted enough families or people directly. When I speak to people from all over the world in my business on a regular basis, and I was just speaking with someone from Australia recently, and this person, I mean, there are a lot of things that foreigners, when I speak to them, love about America, and they look up to America for a lot of things. But on this one, they are dumbfounded. They do not understand why America took the path it did with the virus, because in Australia, the government mandatory shut everything down for a much shorter period of time, and everybody was forced to comply. I'm using that word, I guess, without full personal knowledge of it, but the impression I got is that people were forced to comply, or they just did comply more so than people are in America with, actually shutting business down for a short period of time. I mean, really, like, it was like 5-6 weeks, no travel, no airplanes, no trains, no nothing, only going to the grocery store and in your assigned time frame, all sorts of different things. And Australia shut it down. And guess what? Australia has really mitigated the virus to such low levels, such incredibly low levels, that they have no restrictions, and they're having 30 and 50,000 person arena events, sporting concerts, otherwise nobody needing to wear a mask, and no problem. they also controlled their border and didn't, they've restricted that kind of travel too. But America, through by leadership and or just behavior and of our, hanging on to our freedoms here,
Yeah, the point of view. Yeah, the point of view of things.
we would not do such a thing. And here's where we are. So they think we're just in many ways, idiots, quite honestly. Yeah.
Situational ethics. Are we picking an economy over this? And I really appreciate you bringing up the that we're a bigger country, that there's groups of us that haven't experienced, because even though I know 7 direct or 1 person away death from corona, 7 people in my view set, even though I know 7, as soon as I tell that story twice to people that I just interacted with, who were going, it's not that big of a deal, it's not the mask, why are we forced to do this? I don't know anybody. I could watch me tell my story of the 7 people. Let me tell you about my uncle. Let me tell you about my mentor, or one of my mentors. Let me tell you about this one of my clients who died. Let me tell you about my assistant's father who died at 60. Let me tell. So if I'm sitting there with seven stories, I can literally watch it bounce off their brain, not believing it's true, because they're invested in it not being real, instead of going, it might be, it's something we need to do from consideration, it might be helpful to, at least there was even a mask argument. At least a mask is better than no mask. How about that? Whether or not the mask is effective or not, let's not go there. Let's go, does the mask stop particles of water droplets? Yeah, it kind of does. And that's how viruses get around. So is a mask better than no mask? The struggle for someone fighting for their version of truth, to validate their belief structures, to only look to reinforce those belief structures, is so unsettling. And I'm not going to get in a spitting match, no pun intended, over whether or not the mask is going to work or not. It's sort of like, see if you can take a step back and question what the motive is, and what's the good reason why we would care for each other, look to protect each other, look to stay in a place of safety, and do the best we can with that, instead of looking like, no, I'm making this binary. I'm going to all or nothing. It's like, I don't know. I think we can meet the need for health, and we can meet the need for freedom at the same time. And we need to get good leadership to tell us to start practicing that dynamic, health and freedom and a vibrant economy. And let's start doing both, So this topic we could talk about for another 4 hours, Tom.
I'm sure we could.
about the moral high ground and what's proportional and what leaders can do. But I think that, getting back to the, human beings do make mistakes. We do have partial information, and we really got to keep the stones in our pocket, and stop throwing at each other. And yet we can speak up about what our belief the moral might be, but it might not be the same as the moral people. So, if the Pope makes a statement about something, the Pope makes a statement about something. And it's disappointing that it wasn't a different statement for some people. Well, right now it's safer for him to make that statement. Maybe one day there might be a different Pope with a different statement. and a different belief and a different moral standard, but not today.
So it does shift clearly, is what we're saying. The moral compass moves, it changes, the people change it, our leaders change it. And it seems that's just the way it is, isn't it?
It's just the way it is. I can talk, you and I can sit down and have a round table discussion with our kids and be shocked and horrified at their moral standards because they're influenced by their world and the information's come in. It's, people lie, and we've got to learn how to tolerate lying. That's the moral standard. No, you kind of like advocate for truth, don't you? And they'll go like, no, you don't. Why? You'll just get more power. I just ignore it, and I won't have to deal with it. And that has its own set of consequences to it. Are you going to stand up towards that moral value? So anyways, this is a great discussion on this. And I mean, next time, we really can take a look at, how do we back off to the judgment of burn them at the stake because they make a mistake. And let's talk about how to communicate back from a mistake. What are things Cuomo could have done? What are things that Trump could have done? What are things and they played their card the way they did instead of facing it and moving through. And some of that has to do with their inability to have skills or to have the language ability to do it. And doesn't mean that they're not successful people, because what they did got them to where they are.
Agreed. Yeah. Well, I like that, Bill. I think that's a good place to pick up. I'd like to have that discussion.
All right. Well, more to come, Tom. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.